What happens when the voice that brought King of the Hills John Redcorn to life is silenced in a single gunshot, and the mystery behind it unravels faster than a cartoon cold open? 2 nights after a surprise appearance at a TV festival panel, actor Jonathan Joss lay on a Texas roadway, mortally wounded, while police hauled away a neighbor on a murder charge. Was this the brutal climax of years-long hate, and did the system miss every warning sign? Stick around, because the twists behind Joss's final 48 hours stretch from a burned-down home to a viral convention outburst, and the questions they raise go far beyond animation. Before the sirens, Jonathan Joss was best known for a voice that blended warmth, wit, and quiet strength. Born in San Antonio and proud of his Comanche Cheyenne roots, he stepped into the spotlight in 1998 when he inherited the role of John Redcorn in King of the Hill's second season. From then until the 2009 finale, and already recorded for the Hulu revival, Joss turned a minor recurring character into a cult favorite, complete with deadpan one-liners and feather-soft rock lullabies. But the mic was only half his story. On screen, he popped up everywhere. As Chief Ken Hotate trading zingers with Amy Poehler in Parks and Recreation, as a no-nonsense tribal leader in Tulsa King, as a Union Scout opposite Jeff Bridges in True Grit, and even in big-budget westerns like The Magnificent Seven. Casting agents prized him for authenticity. Co-stars loved him for off-camera guitar jams and a laugh you could hear across a soundstage. At 59, he joked that he'd done more guest cameos than John Redcorn had affairs, yet friends say he was just hitting his stride, lining up indie dramas, voiceover gigs, and conference panels aimed at mentoring native talent. All of which makes what happened on June 1st even harder to grasp. How does a man who spent decades giving audiences comfort become the victim of a violent confrontation on his own burnt-out doorstep? To understand that night, we have to rewind to a fire, a string of threats, and a haunting discovery that turned grief into tragedy. Sunday evening, 7:04 p.m., far west side of San Antonio. A scorched concrete slab and a rusted mailbox are all that remain of Jonathan Joss's childhood home, destroyed by fire just 3 months earlier. He and his husband, Tristan Karen de Gonzalez, pull up to check for forwarded mail and any lingering insurance paperwork. Instead, they spot something chilling. The charred skull of one of their beloved dogs, placed deliberately atop the ashes, its harness draped like a trophy. Witnesses say the couple's grief-stricken shouts echoed across the cul-de-sac. Moments later, a pickup rolled into view. Behind the wheel, 56-year-old neighbor Sigfredo Alvarez Ceja, a man Joss had reportedly clashed with before. According to Tristan's sworn statement, Ceja spewed a barrage of slurs, then raised a handgun from his lap and opened fire. Bullets tore through Joss's torso. In a final reflex, he shoved Tristan aside, absorbing the rounds that might have killed them both. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but the actor was pronounced dead on the pavement. Ceja tried to flee, yet police intercepted him 1 block away. He's now charged with first-degree murder on a $200,000 bond. For fans, the timeline is surreal. 48 hours after Joss joked with an Austin Festival crowd, his life ended beside the ashes of the home he'd lost. But that fire wasn't random, and neither, his husband says, was the hate behind Sunday's attack. Which brings us to the 2-year powder keg of harassment that allegedly set this tragedy in motion. Friday, May 30th, Austin's historic Paramount Theater. Hundreds gather for a King of the Hill reunion panel celebrating the Hulu revival. Midway through nostalgic banter, an uninvited voice cuts in from the audience mic. It's Jonathan Joss. "I'm an actor. I see a mic. I use it. I see a wrong. I make it right. And I just lost my home because I'm gay." The room freezes. Co-creators Mike Judge and Greg Daniels look stunned but sympathetic. Joss thanks the crowd, references star writer Johnny Hardwick's passing, then laments he wasn't asked on stage despite voicing John Redcorn for 12 seasons. Some fans cheer, others shift uncomfortably. Security escorts him out, calmly, yet the optics are jarring. Cell phone clips explode on TikTok, racking up 2 million views in 24 hours. Comments range from, "Let the man speak, Redcorn is royalty," to "Something felt off. He sounded distressed." No one knew that 3 days earlier his GoFundMe had detailed the house fire, the harassment and the deaths of 3 dogs, nor that, 48 hours later, he would be shot dead on the very street where that home once stood. Fans now replay the footage, asking if the panel outburst was a desperate plea for help, missed by everyone in the room. Industry insiders say Joss's removal followed standard festival protocol, but critics argue empathy might have mattered more than format. Whether warning sign or coincidence, that viral moment now reads like a tragic foreshadowing, and Hollywood's response in the hours after his death has been swift. That brings us to Section 6, the tributes, the revival, and the unanswered question. What happens to John Redcorn now? Within hours of the shooting, Tristan went public. Jonathan was murdered because two men loving each other upset the neighborhood. His Facebook post, shared thousands of times, framed the case as a textbook hate crime. Years of slurs, a torched house, a dog's skull left like a calling card, and a gunman allegedly screaming homophobic abuse before pulling the trigger. Civil rights groups amplified the claim, pushing #Justice for Joss across social platforms and demanding federal oversight. San Antonio police, however, struck a cautious tone. In a statement to local media, they confirmed the arrest of Sigfredo Alvarez Ceja for first-degree murder, but added, "At this time, detectives have found no evidence to indicate that Mr. Joss's murder was related to his sexual orientation." Investigators say they're still combing phone records, surveillance footage, and prior call logs to determine whether the killing meets Texas's hate crime threshold. Defense sources hint at a different narrative, that long-running property disputes, not identity, sparked the confrontation, citing reports Joss had used a barbecue pit to heat the house after utilities were cut and locals worried about fire hazards. Tristan calls that victim-blaming spin. So the case now pivots on evidence. Were the threats documented? Did witnesses hear slurs moments before the gunshots? Will ballistics or phone texts reveal premeditation? Prosecutors could add a hate crime enhancement, doubling potential penalties if they can prove bias beyond a reasonable doubt. Until then, two stories duel in the court of public opinion, each side convinced the other is ignoring obvious signs. Meanwhile, just 2 days earlier, Jonathan himself had tried to sound an alarm, on stage in front of hundreds of fans. That viral festival eruption is our next stop. Friday, May 30th, Austin's historic Paramount Theater. Hundreds gather for a King of the Hill reunion panel celebrating the Hulu revival. Midway through nostalgic banter, an uninvited voice cuts in from the audience mic. It's Jonathan Joss. "I'm an actor. I see a mic. I use it. I see a wrong. I make it right. And I just lost my home because I'm gay." The room freezes. Co-creators Mike Judge and Greg Daniels look stunned but sympathetic. Joss thanks the crowd, references star writer Johnny Hardwick's passing, then laments he wasn't asked on stage despite voicing John Redcorn for 12 seasons. Some fans cheer, others shift uncomfortably. Security escorts him out, calmly, yet the optics are jarring. Cell phone clips explode on TikTok, racking up 2 million views in 24 hours. Comments range from, "Let the man speak, Redcorn is royalty," to "Something felt off. He sounded distressed." No one knew that 3 days earlier his GoFundMe had detailed the house fire, the harassment and the deaths of 3 dogs, nor that, 48 hours later, he would be shot dead on the very street where that home once stood. Fans now replay the footage, asking if the panel outburst was a desperate plea for help, missed by everyone in the room. Industry insiders say Joss's removal followed standard festival protocol, but critics argue empathy might have mattered more than format. Whether warning sign or coincidence, that viral moment now reads like a tragic foreshadowing, and Hollywood's response in the hours after his death has been swift. That brings us to Section 6, the tributes, the revival, and the unanswered question. What happens to John Redcorn now? Shockwaves hit animation Twitter before sunrise. Mike Judge, Greg Daniels, and showrunner Saladin Patterson release a joint statement by noon. Jonathan Joss gave John Redcorn heart, humor, and authenticity for over a dozen seasons, including episodes you'll see in the upcoming revival. His voice will echo through the King of the Hill family forever. Within hours, Parks and Rec alum Amy Poehler posts a clip of Chief Ken Hotate's iconic Festival of the Living Pictures scene, captioning, "Thank you for every deadpan bomb you ever lobbed my way." Taylor Sheridan's Tulsa King cast tweets a boots and feather emoji chain, calling him the calmest force on a chaotic set. Native film advocacy groups announced the Jonathan Joss Fellowship, funding Indigenous voice talent for animation. Fans flood Reddit with Redcorn prayer circle memes, sharing favorite lullabies and catchphrases. "I will grow silent now." Hulu confirms Joss had already completed recording for episode 2 of the August 4th revival, and producers are reviewing additional audio that could extend his presence deeper into season 14. No recasting decision will be made until the family is consulted. Industry insiders note this isn't the first voice loss tragedy for the series. Johnny Hardwick, Dale, passed last year, but the double blow leaves a creative void. Writers are reportedly revising late-season scripts to honor both actors without turning the revival into a requiem, yet behind the heartfelt tributes, business logistics loom. Royalty negotiations, potential memorial specials, and whether Hulu adds a "In Memory of Jonathan Joss" bumper ahead of Redcorn's first on-screen return. While Hollywood grieves, the courtroom gears are grinding, because the legal fight ahead could redefine how Texas prosecutes bias-linked violence. That's our next chapter. June 6th, suspect Sigfredo Alvarez Ceja makes his first court appearance, standing behind bulletproof glass while prosecutors outline a charge of first-degree murder. Bail is set at $200,000, but activists immediately call it pocket change for a hate-motivated killing. District Attorney Joe Gonzalez tells reporters that investigators are still combing through phone records, surveillance video, and prior 911 logs to decide whether to add a hate crime enhancement, a designation that could effectively double prison time in Texas. Civil rights groups move fast. Lambda Legal and the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center jointly petitioned the DOJ to monitor the case, citing the couple's 2-year history of reported threats. Local nonprofit Pride San Antonio launches Chiptuck Protect the Neighborhood, urging residents to document harassment before it escalates. A candlelight vigil outside the burned-out home draws 300 people, some holding feather fans and others brandishing rainbow flags that read, "For Jonathan and Tristan, justice." Defense lawyers float an alternate narrative, a property dispute turned deadly in a tragic moment of fear. They hint Ceja will plead not guilty, framing the shooting as self-defense. Tristan's attorneys fire back, calling the claim as hollow as the dog's skull left on that mailbox. Over the next weeks, the case will hinge on 3 questions. Documentation. Can investigators link slur-filled voicemails, prior police reports, and the March arson to Ceja or accomplices? Ballistics and forensics. Do shell casings match Ceja's registered weapon? Was the dog's skull handled DNA clean? Bias proof. Will multiple witnesses testify they heard homophobic epithets seconds before the trigger was pulled? If the DA files hate crime enhancements, sentencing leaps from 5 to 99 years to life without parole. If not, advocates warn it signals another Texas shrug toward LGBTQ safety. Jonathan Joss spent 3 decades turning a cartoon side character into a cultural touchstone, all while opening doors for native actors and LGBTQ+ voices that Hollywood still too often leaves outside. His final act, shielding his husband from a hail of bullets, echoes the quiet heroism he brought to every role. Yet the questions behind his death remain painfully loud. Why did 2 years of reported threats never trigger a protective response? How many more queer, native, or otherwise marginalized neighbors suffer in silence because property dispute sounds easier on a police report than hate crime? What would change if every bystander, panel moderator, or local officer treated early warning signs like the emergencies they can become? If you're watching from Texas, contact your state reps about strengthening hate crime statutes. House Bill 2055 is still in committee. Anywhere else, support orgs tracking anti-LGBTQ+ violence, the Trevor Project, GLAAD, Native Justice Coalition, and keep pressure on investigators by amplifying verified updates, not rumors. And for fans, when the Hulu revival drops on August 4th, Episode 2 will carry Jonathan's voice one more time. Stream it, share it, and remember the man behind John Redcorn wasn't just a cast list. He was a newlywed, a dog lover, and the kind of friend who'd push you out of harm's way without a second thought. Drop your favorite Redcorn moments in the comments, hit subscribe for case updates, and let's make sure Jonathan Joss's story sparks more than headlines. It sparks change.